Hello everybody and welcome to another GAC season review where I go over my defensive performance or the performance of my teams, see who got some holds, who got bad banners for my opponent, who was drawing Galactic Legends, and so on and so forth. First of all, I'm going to look at my season overall stats. I ended with a 6-3 record, which is actually the same that I got in 3v3. I'm happy because I finally had back-to-back winning seasons in 3v3 and 5v5. Usually I fly too high in 3v3 and then get sent back down in 5v5. But this time I was able to pull off some unlikely wins in 5v5 and pull off the winning record. And it was a combination of offense and defense, but I actually had a pretty good defensive showing this season. My average score was 1756, which I'm not super happy with it. That's kind of low. It's because I didn't full clear one round, and that really drags it down. And then my opponent's average score, including a 10-score round where someone just only got 10 banners, it was 1556. But if we exclude that, they averaged 1749. So it was a very close season. It was pretty much a game of inches. A lot of the time, some blowouts, but a lot of them were super close. I lost by a small amount and won by a small amount. So everything really mattered with the defense. So anyway, I'll jump into it. If you enjoy the video, give a like and subscribe if you have not already. I really appreciate it. First team I'm looking at, their performance is General Skywalker team. This is a kind of a perennial defensive team. I'm always using it on defense. So it's always the first one I look at in my reviews. I used with it just a level 8 or 9 Datacron that had high defense or protection and just whatever I could find. It switched from time to time, but it was always the same lineup, obviously. And I set it a few times. It got 3 holds, not a ton, but that's still pretty good. Only 1 Galactic Legend draw. That's kind of disappointing for this team. Usually I'm hoping to draw out like a Sith Eternal solo and just draw that out, but I usually put him on the back wall, so by the time I got to the back, I don't know, they have a full view of the whole board and they can be more choosy with who they're using where. Those few holds translated to some good banners. There was one hold, I think, I think all the holds were just from one match. That's why there's only one really low score, 33. Leading to an average banner score of 58, so I didn't do the best on banners. A little bit disappointing for General Skywalker, but still a very necessary team to set on defense, but I might reevaluate for the future. Next up, we got CLS with the Chupio Datacron, which really changed things up for him as a team and made him much stronger on defense. I actually drew a ton of Galactic Legends, and it was all JML. That was pretty surprising to me. That was the most common counter, was JML in some form. Some of them were really strong combos. It was like JKL and Giant Revan. This is just one example of a team used. And when those were used, it was pretty good banners every time. But like when people didn't use a Galactic Legend first off, they usually got some kind of drop or rough banners, which really helped contribute to a great banner average score of 58.25. The Datacron level 3 I had was health recovery, and then I had retribution, which, you know, it does some. I mean, they already have a counter chance, and it's only affecting C-3PO and Chupio, but I don't know, it might have come into play. High resistance, I was going for, I mean, I didn't have too much control over this. It got up to 80 reroll mat cost to reroll stuff, so I was focused on getting the 3PO and Chewie one, so not the best stats on it. But the highlight is all the Galactic Legend draws, and it's pretty good average banners as well. Now we got another defensive stalwart team, or perennial team, Malgus. And most of the time I ran him with Marauder as the 5th. Sometimes I brought Traya on offense, and then put in Talon as the 5th, which kind of helped, because I actually drew a Galactic Legend loss against a Sith Eternal when I had the Talon. So that was a pretty great highlight. The Datacron I used was Tank Revive with extra defense. Most of the time Tank Revive wasn't making too much of a difference because it's perma kills that come from Sith Eternal, because there's 4 of them. 6 Galactic Legend draws in total. I think there was a Jabba and maybe a JMK, but great average banners, 57.75. Even though people know Malgus has been around for a while and the team doesn't get switched up much, but it's still very hard. You either use a Galactic Legend or try to 2-shot or something. It's very hard to deal with. Aside from that, Traya is not even really good against it. And as we can see here, I even got a Galactic Legend hold. So this is an A performance from Malgus. Next up is Traya, and Traya is kind of a team where you set, and if you don't draw a Galactic Legend, it's kind of a fail, but usually you have to use a Galactic Legend. And as we can see, there were 6 engagements and 6 Galactic Legends drawn. So whenever I set Traya, people didn't mess around, they just brought out a Galactic Legend. A lot of times it was Sith Eternal Emperor in some capacity. He wasn't solo, it was only solo like one time. The rest of the times he had a few people with him, maybe Watt or the Armor or a bunch of Sith. But I gave them a Datacron that had the tank revive. It's not too great, it's only affecting Scion, but the turn meter one, it was only giving a turn to Talon, and that wasn't having much impact. So I had one with kind of spread out stats. It wasn't too impressive for it. And the banners honestly were pretty bad, 63.63 average. It's not good at all, but the only highlight is it was drawing Galactic Legends. There were a few rounds I didn't set it because I brought on offense for Reva. The first time I did that, I didn't need her because I won with them all, and then the second time I used her, and unbeknownst to me, they had already fixed it where Traya would get Deathmark, and I lost. And I didn't know that you had to use this combo. People were telling me that, oh, you don't need Savage or Talon, so you can just bring anyone. But if I brought them, I might have won that one first time. Anyway, doesn't matter. Just a Galactic Legend draw team. And this one was probably the surprise of the season for me, that General Grievous did this well on defense. There were some times where he got soloed by Wampa. There were 5 attacks with Wampa, but they didn't always work. This 26 here was an attempted Wampa solo first, and then followed by 2 more drops. So it took 4 full battles to clear for very bad banners. Another drop here. I think that was another Wampa solo attempt. The biggest thing to it was the tank revive is really good. I wish I had the target lock level 6, but I didn't. I had the revive prevention, so pretty much make sure Night Sisters aren't going to be a counter, which is kind of nice. I got a decent amount of health on it, 36%, some crit damage. So Grievous is hitting pretty hard, but we got 4 holds total, 10 engagements, 3 Galactic Legends drawn, which is crazy for Grievous, and 55 average banners. So that is a crazy performance. And this is why I was so cautious when I faced a Grievous. A lot of times people are like, why don't you just solo with Wampa? But it doesn't always go well. So thumbs up for Grievous. Moving on to Rey. And unlike most of my opponents, I didn't set a tricky or fancy Rey lineup. I just had Rey and Resistance plus Ben. 3 of them at R5, so not super imposing, but it still performed super well. And I think that's mainly because of this level 6 Resistance ability. 100% crit avoidance and 100% critical chance for 2 turns after they're critically hit. So that makes Rey keep at least 1 stack of Inspired usually. And then she can't lose it, and she's ramping her mastery, and that happened a lot. That helped a lot against Starkillers. I think there was one instance where Starkiller won first shot, but there was a lot of Starkiller fails, and then like an Ewok cleanup. So I didn't want to put Starkiller as the most common counter because a lot of times it was a fail. It was just a 2-shot a lot of times. There are 4 holds total. When people using the Galactic Legend, sometimes it did hold, I think, once or twice. But usually those were the better banners. There's only 2 really good banner outcomes, so there were a couple holds with Galactic Legends. The health and protection recovery was great, good health on it. So this performed fantastically. 47.5 banners, that is the lowest average out of any team I had this season, and maybe the lowest I've ever seen in a 5v5. I didn't set it every round. At the beginning I was trying to take her on offense, which I think was probably a bad idea. I should have just kept her on defense in the first round, and that's when I lost twice and won once, so it might have helped turn it around for me. But amazing performance from Rey. Now we got Qui-Gon, which actually performed pretty well and kind of surprised me in how well it did. There were some instances where they got 1 shot for good full banners, 265s, but it was pretty diverse. I mean, there was 1 bad batch, there was 1 Grand Inquisitor, those did probably the best. But I gave this team just some decent arm penetration, armor, and tenacity. This is actually a pretty high amount of stats spread out when you think about it, to get over 90% of all 3 of these things and some health. One time I think I set it with General Kenobi and Ahsoka, and it wasn't worth it. Got 1 shot anyway, and I really had wished I had them with my JMK. But 2 holds. That's, you know, kind of surprising. We've had Qui-Gon for a while. People usually know how to handle him. But I think also with people getting Reva, they're not using Grand Inquisitor as a Qui-Gon counter. They're using it as a mega team, so you kind of lose a little bit in the end of the pool where you're trying to take out lesser teams, like using GI for Qui-Gon Jinn, and that tripped some people up because it was in one of those last battles where they had Reva that I got the holds. So yeah, pretty great performance from Qui-Gon, all things considered. Now, Lord Vader. I was pretty sheepish about setting Lord Vader at first because theoretically Imperial Troopers can just beat him. But when I considered how poorly I've done with Troopers against Lord Vader across the board with set 6, I was setting them using Ninth Sister with him, which kind of messed up my Grand Inquisitor team a lot and caused me some drops. So there's at least one match where I think I would have benefited from having this on Nine Sister on offense, but it was just too tempting for me to try to utilize my level 9 Nine Sister ability, because she would get a bonus turn and then could do an AoE and fear everyone. It worked pretty well. Overall, average banners 52. That's fantastic. 2 holds, which were both JMK timeouts, and that's a function of the high defense, as well as a couple tanks. I'd finally got Royal Guard to R7 for the last several. And there was one Reva, I'm missing a parenthesis here, but there was one Reva drawn, which is basically as good or better than Galactic Legends, so that could be 6 if you consider it like that. I didn't get Trooper one-shot at any point. I think the 165 here was from a Dr. Afra team, which, since I didn't set Jabba at all, the Afra was a pretty good option. And I think that was in a match where I set Piet and not Ninth Sister there. But really good overall from Lord Vader. The most common, it was pretty spread out, but the most common was Supreme Leader Kylo, and those were both for 52, so I'll take that any day. And this is Raddus. He was kind of the worst of the season. And I always set him on defense. I don't have the optimal lineup. You kind of want another tank here, and you don't want Cassian. But I don't feel like investing that into K2 right now. I have some other projects I'm working on. And this gave the team decent tenacity. But the other stats weren't really that impactful, and the abilities weren't that impactful. There was no holds. One Galactic Legend drawn, that was a Jabba, but I'm pretty sure that's because Raddus is on the top wall and someone just got to the end with a lot left, so they just overkilled it. So that's not really, but that was a 57, so that was kind of weird that they took that many banners away. But overall, this is kind of I think this is the 0 of the season. Didn't really help much. Still gonna probably keep it on defense because right now I kind of strap for teams to place on defense, and I wouldn't really know how to use it on offense. Just a couple more teams to go. Here we got the Hondo teams. I use Dash sometimes if I took Bam on offense to try to counter Reva. Otherwise, I had Bam here as the lead. And when it was Bam, it was pretty much always a Traya counter. So Traya was the most common counter by far, 4 times. No Galactic Legends drawn, only 1 hold, and average banners of 60. So this is pretty disappointing compared to the performance in 3v3. And also last 5v5 season, I expected kind of a lot more out of this team. It didn't cause as much of a problem on the front wall as I had hoped for. Usually I thought I would be able to draw a Galactic Legend or something, but since I don't have Reva, people aren't really afraid to use their Traya. And it turned into a pretty disappointing showing. I'm going to miss this Datacron. It had great protection, 45. That's about the highest I've been able to pull from any Datacron. And then the Hondo, I don't know how Hondo's going to do without it. Maybe people will start underestimating him. But the Scoundrel bonus was pretty nice too. A different one would have been better. I think falling below 100% health bonus turn would be great on this team. I just didn't have it, so a little disappointing. And last but not least, certainly not least, because we got the MVP here of the season. We got the Sortie Squad. The beginning of the season didn't go so well. That's where they got a lot of the high banner losses, and that's because I had to use Droideka as the 5th. I was kind of strapped for droids with using Afra now, And eventually I started using Dark Trooper or L3. I didn't have L3 in Relics until I think the last round, and I said her a couple times. But when I used Dark Trooper or L3 as the 5th, it went very well. And obviously I always wanted L3, I just took a long time to get around to it. But that led to 7 holds, 15 total engagements. Great banner rate, 54.75. It's kind of dragged up by the high performers. But the last bracket was the best one I was in, and the average score was 35, 36, and 44, so that's an average of like 38 banners. That's crazy. This really contributed a lot in the wins that I had that were close. Against Boomer, this came in clutch against Lazy Basie or Lackey Back. I don't know how they say it. It was very good, and it brought the match to it almost win. Only lost by 6 banners. So this was super great. People didn't know what to use against it. There wasn't any common counter. I did draw Galactic Legend once. I think someone just used JMK, and this is on the front wall, so it was kind of surprising. They just didn't want to mess around. This is absolutely the best performing team of the season. Not in terms of banners, that would be Rey, and then Lord Vader was great as well. But for non-Galactic Legend, this was by far the best. That's my season overall. Very happy with it. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to thumb up and subscribe if you haven't already. Really appreciate it. I'll see you later.